While I was on What's My Line, I was a national figure from television.
Well, also your books and your column.
And now the people would line up, and I can't tell you how many of them would say, I know you, but you don't know me. And I see you every Sunday night, and I recognize you the minute I saw you. You look taller than you do on television, or you look fatter or smaller. They've all got some comment, and the old ladies in particular, very hard to have to learn to push them along, because left to themselves, they'll stand there talking. They're nervous. They giggle ridiculously, you know, and they've never met a television celebrity before. So it was great while this was going on. I don't know what's going to happen now. Gradually, they won't remember me so well because the show is over. But for 17 years, this face of mine every week was coming to millions of homes. So everybody knew me.
Well, you know, we were just saying, What's My Line? I think that sort of fits in because you started that October 20th, 1950, according to my source of information.
We haven't really done What's My Line.
No, why don't we...
We'll do that, yeah, and then that's quite a story in itself.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting, and I'd love to hear about it anyway.
Well, one of the questions that most often asked me is, how did you get into television? Well, like everything else in my life, was luck. First of all, I'd become somewhat known on radio as a result of the war and the books of bullets and lecturing and so that my name became one of those that would come up in discussions about being able to talk on radio, and
you were doing some lecturing.
And doing some lecturing, and the word got. And I love parlor games. Some of them, not all of them, but I enjoy parlor games. And there were pictures of a game in life once at Lisa McMean's house where we played the game, it's called, and a lot of pictures of it because there happened to be a lot of celebrities there like Bing Crosby and whatnot, and Life made a feature of it. So I became somewhat known as a game player, and I had done one or two experimental TV programs down at Grand Central Station when CBS had its first experimental TV station in the 3rd floor of Grand Central Station. And Dick Rogers and Gypsy Rose Lee and I did some kind of a crazy game there once. So at least I had got my toes into it. And one day, a man named Mark Goodson, a name I'd never heard in my life, called up at Random House. And he said, I'm Mark Goodson of Goodson Todman. And I said, hooray for you, what can I do for you? And he said, we have a television show every Sunday night we started, and I hear you're a good game player. And one of the men who's on the show won't be here next Sunday. Would you like to take his place for this one Sunday night? And I said, you bet I would. What is it? I didn't have the faintest idea. And he said, it's called What's My Line. It's been in existence for about 5 months. And the sponsor is a man named Dr. Montagnier, who has a product called Stopette, which is one of those 966 underarm sprays, you know, that we've discovered in television that we all have bad odors, you know. Television has proved it. I've always said that American people have bad breaths, bad dentures, terrible underarm odors, smells all over the place, bad stomachs, flat feet, dirty sinks. Everything is awful about them. The only happy people in TV commercials are people who are getting cancer smoking cigarettes. But anyway, this was the sponsor. I never heard of Dr. Montagnier. I'd never heard of Stopette. I'd never heard of Mark Goodson or Bill Todman. I'd never heard of What's My Line. But he said, come down Sunday night, an hour before the show, and he said, it's a very simple game. We'll explain it to you.
Do you know who you were replacing?
Yes, I'll tell you that.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I went down on Sunday night. He told me who was on. I had never met John Daly. I'd heard of him because he was the head of the news bureau of ABC at that time. Dorothy Kilgallen, I read her rather disgusting column quite a long time, but I'd never met Dorothy Kilgallen. I had met Arlene Francis. I met her at a couple of parties and liked her. The men on the program were, one of the anchor men was Hal Block. I'd never met him either. He was the least known of the people. And the other regular had been Louis Untermeyer, the poet anthologist. Well, Louis Untermeyer was away on a lecture, bless his soul, the Sunday night. So I went down and played What's My Line. Well, of course, it was just as simple as nothing to it. You went out and tried to guess what people did, and then the mystery guess with your mask on. If you didn't get it, nobody was much the wiser because it was a team effort, not an individual one. And somebody, most of the time, they'd get it, and nobody really, except the participants themselves, were quite aware what the score was. The only person who took it more and more seriously was Dorothy Kilgallen. I'll come to that later. But I'm talking about my first appearance, and I was lucky this first night, and handled myself rather well for somebody who had never been on it before. And there was a big party happened to be that night given by Dr. Untermeyer, whose Stopette was getting famous because of What's My Line. We ruined him because when the program started, it was a very small program. None of the big companies wanted to sponsor it. It was one of those innovations they thought would last the 13-week period and then vanish under the sea somewhere. But this program caught on like lightning. And as it spread from city to city, of course the cost went up and up and up. And Dr. Untermeyer, who was very proud of this program, refused to relinquish any part of it. He would not have any co-sponsor. He stuck with this program. And so finally we ruined him. Because by the time we got finished, this was in practically every city in the United States. We had over 140 stations, and it was up on the top 10 for about 15 years. And the wire charges became enormous. You couldn't possibly sell enough underarm perspiration spray to make up for it, and he only had this one product. So finally, he had to sell out, but broke his heart. And
so you had to go to the party.
His slogan was, "Poof, there goes perspiration." I remember the Harvard Lampoon had a picture once of Dr. Untermeyer. I always showed him with a white coat in the laboratory, and him shooting through the top of a building. And the slogan, the caption was, "Poof, there goes Dr. Untermeyer." He was a sweet man, but quite a mountebank, you know. And
so you went to the party.
So I went to the party that he gave. And John and I fell in love with each other at sight. He's a great man.
John Daly.
Oh, John Daly. We started kidding each other the minute we met. We hit it off perfectly. And I've always loved Arlene. I told you I'd met her. She's one of the most charming girls in the world. As for Dorothy, personally, she was very nice. All the cattiness that came out in the column did not show when you met her personally. She was a very nice woman. I hit it off with her. So Block, I thought, was Claude. He wasn't in the class, anybody else. Well, I went home and I said to Phyllis, gee, this was fun. Interesting experience. Within 3 weeks, Dr. Louis Untermeyer was in a terrible jam. He was a great signer. He signed, he was like General von Hindenburg. He signed any piece of paper I think was stuck in front of him. And he had signed a few things too many. A few communist organizations. I don't think Louis Untermeyer is no more a communist than J. Edgar Hoover. But he had joined several societies, a Soviet-American Friendship Society, something or other, that made him rather conspicuous. And a few of these right-wing organizations began hounding people like Louis Untermeyer. It was an unfortunate time in television when the blacklist was coming into effect, and a lot of people lost their jobs outrageously because of a grocer up in Syracuse who made a lot of trouble. Was finally sued by Mr. Falk, and Falk won a huge decision from him, but he dropped dead just after Falk had won the decision, so he never collected. I think he would have collected about $1 million. Remember, I think his name was Johnson, up in Syracuse. And the Catholic war veterans were raising hell with Louis Untermeyer. I'll say this for Goodson Todman and Montagnier, they held out against all this as long as they could. But finally they started picketing the theater where the What's My Line was done. And the pressure became too great. And Montagnier said, after all, I'm paying a lot of money for this. I don't want my product picketed. You know, so reluctantly they had to tell Louis Untermeyer he had to leave the program. Well, that left that place open for the little boy who had played it one night. And
so they called you up?
They called me up and said, would you like to do it permanently? And I said, would I?